Today we are going to study about understanding direct and indirect narrations. So before starting this lecture, I just want to introduce about what is direct and indirect narrations. So direct and indirect narrations are two exploring nuances of storytelling. What is direct narration? See, direct narrations is a literacy technique where the author directly addresses the reader, often using the second person pronoun, which is you. This is the techniques which create a sense of immediacy and the intimacy, drawing the reader into the story. What is indirect narration? Indirect narration, on the other hand, is a technique where the author reports the thoughts, feelings, or speeches to a character without directing, addressing the reader. So these techniques create a sense of distance or objectify, which allowing the reader to observe the character's thoughts and feelings without being directly addressed. So this is the direct and indirect narrations. So I'm just giving you some examples about direct and indirect narrations. In direct narrations, we use you are standing at the edge of the cliff, feeling the wind through your hair. Maybe you realize that you have made a terrible mistake. So these sentences includes direct narrations because it's just quoted with the you. Now just talking about indirect narrations. So for example, she stood at the edge of the cliff, feeling the wind sweep through her hair. He realized that he had made a mistake or a terrible mistake. So here I just use she and he instead of using you. In direct narration, the author addresses the reader directly, while in direct narration, the author reports and the character's thoughts and feeling without addressing the reader. Understanding the difference between direct and indirect narration can help you appreciate the author's choice of narrative techniques and how it affects the reading experience. So here are some additional examples and explanation to help you better understand direct and indirect narrations. Direct narration. So you feel a sense of dread as you walk into the abandoned house. You think to yourself, this is a terrible idea. You wonder what lies ahead as you venture into unknown. So, in each of these sentences, the author is directly addressing the reader, which is using the second person pronoun you to create a sentence immediately or intensity. In indirect narration, she felt a sense of dread as she walked into the abandoned house. He thought to himself, this is a terrible idea. They wondered what lay ahead as they ventured into the unknown. So, see, in these examples, the author is reporting the thoughts and feelings of the characters without directly addressing the reader. This creates a sense of distance or objectify, which allowing the reader to observe the character's thoughts, feelings without being directly addressed. So here are some additional terms related to direct or indirect narrations. They are different type of indirect narrations are. For example, first is free indirect narrations. It means a technique where the author reports a character's thoughts and feelings without using direct quotes or the second person pronoun. In stream of consciousness narration, a technique where the author reports a character's thoughts and feelings in a fluid of a lot of thoughts and the feelings and having the unstructured manner, often without any having punctuations or clear sentences or having the clear boundaries. So I hope you will understand what I'm trying to relate with the narrations. And let me break down into the direct or indirect narrations further. So, what is direct and indirect narration? The authors, the reader, directly using the second person pronoun, which is you. It's like the author is speaking directly to the reader, which is pulling them into the story. It creates a sense of immediacy or intimacy, like the reader is experiencing the story firsthand. Often used in the interactive stories, choose your own adventurous books and instructional writing. For example, you walk into the dark room, feeling a chill run down your spine. You hear footsteps behind you. So this is, I just included you here. So this is the direct narrations. In indirect narrations, the author reports the thoughts, feeling, and actions of a character without directly addressing the reader. It uses the third person pronouns like he, she, they, or the first person pronoun like I to report through and feelings. It's also create a sense of distance, of objectify, like the reader is observing the character from the outside. It's often used in the novel, short stories, biographies. For example, she walked into the dark room, feeling a chill run down her spine. She heard footsteps behind her. So I use she instead of you. So this is indirect narrations. Now, what is pre-indirect narrations are? A blend of direct or indirect narration. The author reports the character's thoughts and feelings without using direct quotes or the second person pronoun. It also creates a sense of closeness to the character, thoughts and feelings without directly addressing the reader. It's often used in the literary fictions and psychological networks or novels. For example, her heart raced as she walked into the dark room, fear creeping up her spine, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So this is I'm just connecting the things towards the person or towards the psychological novels are. So a stream of consciousness narrations are a fluid and a structured reporting of a characters and thoughts and feelings. It's often without punctuation or clear sentence boundaries. It's create a sense of immediacy and intimacy, like the reader is directly experiencing the character's thoughts and feeling. It's often used in the experimental literature and poetic writing. For example, her thoughts raced as she walked into the dark room. It's fear creeping up her spine. What was she doing here? She was a terrible idea. So you were just confusing and you just creating a sense immediately, and you just like that she is doing something and she is having the terrible idea. So you are just creating the sense. This you're using the punctuations for having the clarity, having the you have just having the sentence boundaries. So here are some examples of direct and indirect narrations. Direct narrations, for example, you are standing at the edge of the cliff, feeling the wind whip through your hair. This it means addresses the reader directly. You think to yourself, this is a terrible idea. It means it uses direct quotes and addresses the reader. You wonder that what lie ahead as you venture into the unknown. So it means addresses the reader directly. In indirect narrations, she stood up at the edge of the cliff, feeling the wind whip through her hair. It means reports her thoughts and feelings without direct quotes. He thought to himself that this is a terrible idea. Report his thoughts without addressing the reader. They wondered what lay ahead as they ventured into the unknown. It means reports their thoughts without direct quotes. What is pre-indirect narration? I have some examples related to it, which I explained earlier. I just want to explain what it actually means. Her heart raced as she stood up at the edge of the cliff, fear the creeping up her spine. So it means her thoughts and feelings without having the direct quotes. I just giving that the example. His mind raced with the doubts, thinking, was what it this was a terrible idea. So it means the reports his thoughts without having the direct quotes. Their senses were on high alert as they ventured into the unknown. So it means report their thoughts and feelings without having the direct quotes. What are the examples of the stream of consciousness narrations? So here are some examples related to it. Her thoughts raced as she stood at the edge of the cliff tier and creeping up her spine. What was she doing here? So it means it's not a structured reporting of thoughts. Before I explaining this in free indirect narrations, I just explained her heart raced as she stood up the edge of the cliff and having the fear of her spine. So this is the structured manner which I use. But in stream of consciousness narrations, you are not able to join each of any sentences. This is very in unstructured manner, and not you're able to get it. So fluid unstructured reporting of thoughts. Next, his mind raced with doubts. Was a terrible idea. What if something goes wrong? So this is also fluid and unstructured reports of thoughts. Next, their senses were on the high alert as they ventured into the unknown what they had. So this is also the fluid unstructured reporting of thoughts. So these are the examples which illustrate the different ways direct and indirect narrations can be used to convey a character's thoughts and feeling. So what is the difference between direct and indirect narrations? Here are the some difference between direct and indirect narrations in a proverb, which is indirect narrations. It is a definition of direct narration is addresses the reader directly using second person pronoun, which is you. Purpose of direct narration is creates a sense of immediacy and intimacy, drawing the reader into the story. Examples I already told you before, we have some common uses of interactions. For example, it's having an interactive stories. You can also choose your own adventures book, instructions, writings. Whereas in direct narrations, it's having the reports, thoughts, feeling, and actions without having directly addressing the reader using third party or third person pronoun, which is he, she, and they. Or we can use the first person pronoun, which is I. What is the purpose of indirect narration? It's create a sense of distance or objectify, allowing the reader to observe the character's thoughts and feelings. For example, I told you earlier, for example, I'm just giving one example. She stood up at the edge of the cliff and feeling the wind whip through her hair. And a wonderful what lay ahead as the venture into the So these are the example which I told you earlier. It's all come into the indirect narrations. Here are some common uses in the indirect narrations, which is novel, short stories, and biographies. So here are some key differences regarding indirect and direct narrations, which is address. Direct narration addresses the reader directly, while indirect narration report thoughts and feelings without addressing the reader. The purpose direct narrations create a sense of immediacy and the intimacy, while indirect narrations it's create a sense of direction or objectify. Tone. Direct narration can create a sense of urgency and immediacy, while indirect narration can create a sense of perspective and insight. Here, I just want to describe the definition of direct narrations and indirect narrations. First, just go through the direct narrations. Direct narration is a literacy technique where the author addresses the reader directly, often using the second person pronoun you. So, this techniques create a sense of immediacy and the intimacy, drawing the reader into the story and involving them in the narrations. So, in direct narrations, the author speaks directly to the reader. The reader is addressed as you. The narrative is often more personal and interactive. The reader is drawn into the story, feeling like a participant. The author can create a sense of urgency and having immediacy. For example, you walk into the dark room feeling a chill run down your spine. You hear the footsteps behind you. And in direct narrations is often used in interactive stories. You can also choose any other adventure books and informational stories, instructions writings, and also use in these streams of consciousness writing. It's just create a sense of closeness and engagement, having the making the reader feel like an active participant in the story. Definition of indirect narration is: indirect narration is a literary technique where the author reports the thoughts, feeling, and action of a character without directly addressing the reader. So these techniques create a sense of distance or objectively allow the reader to observe the character, which thoughts and feelings without being directly involved. So in indirect narration, the author reports like the character thoughts and having the feelings and the action. The character thoughts that the feelings are described using the third person pronoun he, she, they, or the first person pronoun I. The narrative is often more objective and observational. The reader is able to observe the character's thoughts and feelings without being directly addressed. For example, he thought to himself, this is a terrible idea, which is indirect thought. So I gave you the example that she walked in the dark room and having the chill run through her spine. So this is just talking about the third person indirect narration. When I'm just giving the example about I walked into the dark room feeling a chill run down my spine. So it means the first person indirect narration. They wonder what lay ahead as they ventured into the unknown. It is known as indirect wonder. So, indirect narration is often used in novels, short stories, biographies, historical accounts. So, it is create a sense of perspective and the insight allowing the reader, which is observed by the thoughts and feelings without having the direct involvement. So I have some different examples which in indirect narrations include the the detective piece together the clue trying to solve the mystery. This is indirect action. The teacher explained the concept hoping the student would understand, which is indirect narration. The athlete felt a surge of adrenaline as he crossed the finish the line. This is indirect feeling. The scientist thought about the implication of her discovery. This is indirect thought. So, example of direct and indirect narrations, which is in the direct narration is you are standing and having the addresses the readers directly, and having the direct narration is the style which is writing the first point, and having and also using the direct story which is used as I and we, which is describe the action. It is also often used by the autobiographies and having the person essay or having the short stories. And indirect narrations, I already told you before that having the different topics which is also create a sense, having the distance objectify and having thoughts and feelings without having the addressing the reader. There's this very different type of examples and having in direct and indirect speeches. So I have some different examples of indirect narrations. The scientist thought about the implications of her discovery. So it is come into the indirect thought. The character's eye narrowed as she complimented her next move. So this is indirect observation. You just observe it. You just observe her eye. That her eye is very narrow, and she just complimented as her next move. The team leader minds race with the strategy for the upcoming game. So this is also comes into the indirect thoughts. So these are the examples which demonstrate how direct and indirect narrations can be used to create a different effects, moods in the writing. Let's go further. So example of indirect and direct narrations which comes in first simple sentences. What are simple sentences? See, simple sentences are also known as simple verb. It is a grammatical concept that refer to a verb form that and express an action or state without any additional aspects of modification. In other words, it is a basic verb form that simplifies a state as an action or condition without any additional information about when, how, or to what extent it occurs. So, for example, I have some example regarding this. See, let's I am happy. So in this is a direct statement. So she said that I am happy. What is the indirect statement? She said that she was happy. The direct statement is she said I will go to the market. Indirect statement he said that he would go to the market. So these are the statements which come into the simple tenses. There are some three main simple tenses in this: present simple, past simple, and future simple. So past simple is I go, she eats, they write. It's used for the habitual and general truth for action that happens regularly. In past simple, for example, I went, she ate, they wrote. It used for the completed action in the past. In future simple, for example, I will go, she will eat, they will write. These are used for the action that will what will happen in the future. So simple tenses is often used to state facts or habits which describes the routines or regular events, express general truth or opinions, tell stories or recount past events, and having make the prediction or plan for the future. For example, I ate breakfast every morning. This is present simple. I went to the park yesterday, which is past simple. I will attend the meeting tomorrow. So this is future simple. So these are the example which has come into the simple tenses. Is an essential aspects of very conjunctions and is used in many contexts, including everyday conversations, writing and having the story writings and using the vlogs, having the articles. It is a common uh, simple statements which we use in the simple sentences. So before starting the interrogative sentences, I just want to give some examples of that and indirect narrations using simple sentences. So, in direct narrations, use this, for example, you see a ghost in front of you, you feel scared, you think this is terrifying. So, this is all comes into the direct narration. Indirect narration, see, she she see a ghost in front of her. He feels scared. They think she is terrifying. So this has come into the indirect form. Three, the indirect narrations comes into the simple tenses that her heart races at the sight of the ghost. His fear grows as he takes a step back. Their minds are filled with terror. So when it's come to this theme of the consciousness narrations, ghost, oh no, it's a ghost, what to do, what I do. So when you comes into the streams of consciousness narrations, you're just using the exclamatory marks and the question mark with the interrogative sentence statements and having the double commas, inverted commas we will use. So you can also react like this: scared, so scared, can't move. So you're just having the terrible and having the consciousness narrations, terror, pure terror all around me. So you just using these statements while using the stream of consciousness narrations. So these are some simple sentence demonstrations with having a different way in the direct and indirect narrations. It can be used to convey a character's thoughts, feelings, creating different effects and moods in the story. So while interrogative sentences, So interrogative sentences is also known as the questions. It's sentences that ask for information and clarification. They are used to inquire about something, seek an answer, or having a clarified doubt. Interrogative sentences typically begin with a question and having interrogative pronoun such as who, what, where, when, why, how, did. So these are the some interrogative words which we use in the interrogative sentences. For example, in direct sentences, that she asked, "Are you coming?" This is the interrogative statement. Indirect, she asked if I was coming. Direct, he asked, "Where do you live?" In indirect statements, he asked where I live. In direct statements, they ask, "Did you see? Did you see the movie?" In indirect statements, they ask if I had seen the movie. So these are the statements which come under the interrogative statements. I have some more interrogative statements examples. For example, who is going to the party? What is your name? Where are you from? When is the meeting? Why did you leave? How are you doing? So interrogative sentences can also be used to seek confirmation that it is true. Ask for instructions. How do I? Request information. What is the question mark? You're just using the what is the just requesting the questions. Clarify the statements. Did you mean? So interrogative sentences are the essential parts of communication as they allow us to gather information, seek understanding, and engage in meaningful conversations. Here I have some examples of interrogative statements, like while using yes or no questions. Is he going to the party? Are they coming tomorrow? Do you like ice cream? Did she finish her project? Will they arrive on time? So these are the questions which is used for yes or no statements. So next is we use WH questions. For example, who is going to the party? What is your favorite color? Where are you from? When is the meeting? Why did you leave? How are you doing? So these all questions come into the WH questions. Now, third is open-ended questions. What do you think about new policy? How did you feel about the movie? What are your plans for the weekend? Can you tell me about your childhood? What do you like to do in your free time? So these are the questions which is open-ended and you can ask from anyone. Next is tag questions. When you're tagging the questions for someone that you are going to the party, aren't you? She finished her project, hasn't she? They're coming tomorrow, aren't they? He likes ice cream, doesn't he? You have been to Paris, haven't you? So these are the tech questions which we use. So there's some note regarding tech questions. The tech questions are used to seek confirmation or agreement and are often used in the informal conversation. So here are some example of interrogative questions and statements which is using indirect and indirect narrations, which is what are you doing? So she asked him directly, and indirectly she asked him what he doing. So where are you going? He asked directly. He asked where she is going or he is doing normal. So why did you leave? She asked him directly. Indirect narrations, she asked him what he was doing. He asked her where she was going. She asked him why he had left. So this is the indirect and direct narrations which we use in, and I'm having some different type of questions also, which is nested questions, which comes in indirect and direct. So what did she ask you? He asked him directly. This is direct narration. He asked him what she had asked him. So this is indirect narrations. Why did he say he was going? She asked her directly, that direct narrations. She asked her where he had said he was going. This is indirect narrations. So I'm having some note about this. Direct narrations use direct quotes and reports the exact words spoken. Indirect narrations report the content of speech without using direct quotes. Nested questions combine direct and indirect narrations to ask about a previous question or statement. So these are comes into the interrogative statements.